The Second World War was not only a clash of nations, industries, and ideologies, it was a war of minds. Behind every armored thrust, amphibious landing, and encircled army stood a commander whose decisions shaped the fate of millions. In this documentary, the most feared generals of WWII, masters of strategy and war, we step into the command tents, underground bunkers, and smoke-filled war rooms of the men who orchestrated some of the most devastating campaigns in modern history. They were brilliant, ruthless, disciplined, controversial, and above all, feared. Among the Allied commanders, few names carried as much authority as Dwight D. Eisenhower. Calm, diplomatic, and strategically patient, Eisenhower was not known for fiery speeches or dramatic battlefield theatrics. Instead, his power lay in coordination. As supreme commander of Allied forces in Europe, he managed vast multinational armies drawn from the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and other Allied nations. The scale of his responsibility was unprecedented. He oversaw the planning and execution of the Normandy landings, an operation so complex that a single miscalculation could have prolonged the war for years. What made Eisenhower feared was not personal ferocity, but his ability to command trust, unify rival personalities, and commit to enormous risks. When the invasion date approached and storm clouds gathered over the English Channel, it was Eisenhower who made the final call. Millions of soldiers depended on his judgment. History would hinge on it. If Eisenhower represented coordination and steady leadership, George S. Patton embodied aggression and relentless momentum. Patton believed in speed, shock, and the psychological destruction of the enemy's will. His armored columns moved like lightning across Europe, exploiting breakthroughs and turning retreats into routes. He demanded discipline and toughness from his men, cultivating a larger-than-life image with polished helmets, ivory-handled pistols, and uncompromising speeches. To the enemy, Patton was unpredictable and dangerous. He understood that war was not just about territory, but about morale. When German forces launched their surprise winter offensive in the Ardennes, Patton executed one of the most remarkable maneuvers of the war, pivoting his entire army northward in record time to relieve besieged Allied troops. That kind of operational agility turned him into a symbol of offensive warfare. His name alone carried weight in intelligence briefings and frontline whispers. Across the battlefield in North Africa and later in Western Europe stood one of Germany's most respected commanders, Erwin Rommel. Known as the Desert Fox, Rommel earned his reputation through daring maneuvers and a keen sense of battlefield opportunity. Leading German and Italian forces in the harsh deserts of North Africa, he repeatedly outmaneuvered numerically superior opponents. He struck quickly, often without waiting for formal approval from higher command, relying on instinct and mobility. His tactics emphasized surprise, flexible formations, and bold flanking movements. Even his adversaries admired his professionalism and refusal to wage war with unnecessary brutality. Yet Rommel's career also reflected the strategic limitations of Germany's war effort. Despite his tactical brilliance, he struggled with supply shortages and the overwhelming industrial power of the Allies. Still, among Allied troops, the mere mention of Rommel signaled a capable and dangerous opponent who could turn defensive positions into sudden counterattacks. On the Eastern Front, where the war reached unimaginable levels of destruction, another commander emerged as one of the most formidable military minds of the century, Georgy Zhukov. Representing the might of the Soviet Union, Zhukov played a central role in defending Moscow, orchestrating the counteroffensive at Stalingrad, and later leading the massive push toward Berlin. He commanded armies numbering in the millions. His approach to warfare was ruthless and calculated. Zhukov understood that the Eastern Front was a war of attrition, one that demanded sacrifice on an enormous scale. He coordinated vast artillery barrages, deep encirclement operations, and relentless offensives that ground down German forces. German commanders feared the sheer weight of Soviet counterattacks under his direction. Zhukov was not merely reactive. He adapted, learned from early disasters, and restructured Soviet command systems into a more effective war machine. By the time Soviet troops stormed Berlin, Zhukov had become synonymous with unstoppable momentum. Another critical Allied figure was Bernard Montgomery, often known as Monty. Methodical and cautious, Montgomery believed in overwhelming preparation before committing to battle. He sought clear superiority in men, tanks, and artillery before launching offensives. This approach contrasted sharply with the boldness of commanders like Patton. In North Africa, Montgomery rebuilt British morale after a series of defeats and achieved a decisive victory at El Alamein. That battle marked a turning point in the Desert War. Montgomery's strength lay in organization and morale building. He simplified objectives and ensured his troops understood the plan. Critics sometimes accused him of excessive caution, but his defenders argued that his thorough planning saved lives and ensured sustainable victories. To his troops, he represented clarity and confidence during uncertain times. On the Axis side in Europe, strategic innovation also came from figures like Erich von Manstein. Manstein was one of the architects of Germany's early war successes. He helped design the bold plan that sent German forces through the Ardennes forest in 1940, bypassing heavily fortified French defenses and leading to the rapid collapse of France. Manstein's operational thinking emphasized flexibility and concentration of force at decisive points. He believed in striking where the enemy least expected and exploiting weaknesses with precision. Later, on the Eastern Front, he demonstrated remarkable skill in conducting counteroffensives under difficult conditions. Yet even his brilliance could not compensate for Germany's dwindling resources and increasingly rigid high command structure. Manstein's ideas often clashed with political interference from Berlin, highlighting the tension between military expertise and ideological leadership. In the Pacific theater, fear took on a different dimension. Naval warfare, island-hopping campaigns, and long-range airstrikes defined the conflict. One of the most influential figures at the war's outset was Isoroku Yamamoto of Japan. Yamamoto understood the industrial strength of the United States and reportedly warned that Japan could only sustain limited success in a prolonged war. Nevertheless, he planned and executed the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, a strike designed to cripple American naval power in the Pacific. The operation demonstrated meticulous planning, coordination, and daring. For a time, Japanese forces advanced rapidly across Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands. Yamamoto emphasized carrier-based naval aviation, recognizing that the future of naval warfare lay in air power rather than battleships. However, as the war progressed, American industrial capacity and code-breaking successes shifted the balance. Yamamoto's death in 1943 marked a turning point, symbolizing the gradual erosion of Japanese strategic initiative. Opposing Japanese expansion in the Pacific was Douglas MacArthur, a commander whose personality matched the vastness of the theater he operated in. MacArthur combined theatrical flair with calculated strategy. After being forced to withdraw from the Philippines early in the war, he famously vowed, "I shall return." That promise became a rallying cry. MacArthur's island-hopping strategy aimed to bypass heavily fortified Japanese positions, isolating them while capturing strategically valuable islands. His approach conserved resources and reduced casualties compared to direct assaults on every enemy stronghold. When he waded ashore in the Philippines during his return, it was more than a military maneuver. It was a symbolic moment of redemption. To his troops and to the enemy, MacArthur projected confidence and inevitability. What made these generals feared was not merely their rank or authority, but their ability to shape the battlefield itself. They understood logistics, the lifeblood of war. They grasped the importance of intelligence, deception, and morale. Some were masters of armored warfare, using tanks and mechanized infantry to punch through enemy lines. Others specialized in defensive resilience, transforming retreats into strategic delays that bought critical time. Each operated within the constraints of political leadership, industrial capacity, and alliance dynamics. Yet within those constraints, they exercised creativity and resolve. Fear in wartime is complex. For soldiers, it might mean facing an opponent known for relentless attacks. For political leaders, it might mean negotiating with a commander who refused to compromise on military necessities. For entire nations, it meant confronting adversaries who seemed unstoppable in the early years of the conflict. German blitzkrieg tactics stunned Europe. Soviet counteroffensives shocked invading armies. Allied amphibious landings demonstrated that no coastline was beyond reach. Behind each shockwave stood a general whose decisions rippled across continents. The reputations of these commanders were built not only on victories but also on adversity. They faced setbacks, miscalculations, and staggering casualties. They navigated rivalries within their own ranks and tensions with political superiors. Some balanced ambition with caution, others gambled on bold strokes. In the end, their legacies were shaped by outcomes that extended far beyond the battlefield, reshaping borders, influencing post-war geopolitics, and altering the global balance of power. The Second World War remains one of the most studied conflicts in history precisely because it combined industrial-scale destruction with intensely personal leadership decisions. A single order could mobilize thousands of tanks or redirect entire armies. A misjudgment could cost tens of thousands of lives. The most feared generals of the war carried that weight daily. Their strategies were debated in war rooms, tested in mud and desert sand, and remembered long after the guns fell silent. As we look back, we see not caricatures of heroism or villainy, but complex military professionals operating under extraordinary pressure. Their fearsome reputations were earned through discipline, audacity, calculation, and at times ruthless determination. Whether coordinating multinational invasions, launching armored spearheads, defending cities under siege, or commanding fleets across vast oceans, they demonstrated that in total war, strategy is as decisive as firepower. The most feared generals of WWII, masters of strategy and war, is ultimately a story about leadership under extreme conditions. It is about how individuals shaped events that reshaped the world. Their names endure not simply because they wore stars on their shoulders, but because they commanded moments that define the 20th century.